Hey, friends, welcome back to the Do Cool Shit podcast. It's me, Meryl. And today I want to talk about something that comes up all of the time when it comes to growth. And that is the expectations we have about what growth is supposed to feel like. Because I had a conversation with a client recently in the past week that kind of perfectly captured something that I see happen over and over again. She had done an InBody scan. And if you don't know what an InBody scan is, it is a type of measurement. You step on the scale, you hold on to these two little handles, and there is kind of like this electric current. It's called it measures by impedance. I won't get like all sciencey on you, but it essentially gives you a measurement of what your body composition looks like with body fat, with muscle, and then can like separate in the areas of your body, like what the measurement is, and like your arms, your legs, your trunk, etc. And just like any scale, I'll add a little caveat in here is that there can be a level of inaccuracy here. And I'm just adding this in because these are big now, especially because Hume has, I think that's the brand, has in body scale that you can have at home. So I just want to add this in that it's great data and it's a lot of data, and it's also still a scale that we take with a grain of salt. But I digress. And she told me after she did this InBody scan, and I quote, "I was disappointed with the number on the scale, even though I know I shouldn't be." And I stopped her right there because I was like, wait, who the hell said we shouldn't feel disappointed or disappointment? Somewhere along the way, a lot of people develop this idea that once they start to do the work, once they become more self-aware, once they understand nutrition better, once they're working on their mindset, that they're not supposed to have these reactions anymore. And if you're doing personal growth correctly, you shouldn't feel disappointed by the scale. Like, this is what people think. You shouldn't have negative thoughts. You shouldn't feel disappointment or disappointed. But the truth is that we don't have control over the thoughts and the emotions that pop up. They're kind of automatic. They kind of do their own thing. What growth gives you is what you do next. So let's go back to my client here. She saw the number on the scale. Her initial reaction was disappointment. Totally normal. Again, nobody tells you that, like, if anybody's telling you that you shouldn't feel things in this point, then we need to have a conversation. Send them my way. It's totally okay for whatever emotion to pop up. But instead of spiraling into it like she would have done in the past, she kind of paused and she started to zoom out. And she realized she was weighing herself during a point in her cycle where she did feel a little bit more bloated. She likely had more water weight. She looked at the body composition data that the InBody gave her, and she realized that some of the weight that it said she had gained was muscle. And then she thought about the bigger picture of how her body composition has changed over time. Like, she recently did a side by side because it was 3 photos of her deadlifting, which was, I want to say, May to January. And we could very clearly see in those photos that she had lost body fat and had gained muscle mass. Very clearly in those photos. So she thought about that. She thought about how much stronger she's gotten since the last time that she had weighed herself or done that InBody measurement. And she also recognized something really, really important here. And that was that going and eating junk, for less of better terms, I don't love to use that word, but eating junk, which is what she would say and did say all day, like she would have in the past, wasn't going to make her actually feel better. And it wasn't going to support the bigger picture of what she's building. She knew that that food would have been kind of like a coping mechanism. It would have helped her to feel something different than disappointment in those moments. But then afterwards, she would have felt disappointment again, and probably an exacerbated amount of disappointment. And when we're talking about body composition and body changes, that's not aligned with what she wanted. So that moment right there, that's what growth looks like. That's the work. But notice what didn't change. The emotion didn't change. She still felt disappointment. What changed was her response. She didn't let that emotion dictate her behavior. She was able to observe it. She was able to question it. She was able to zoom out. And then she made a decision that supported her long term goals. That is what growth is. One of the biggest problems I see is that people expect growth to eliminate those moments. Again, they think if I'm doing the work, I shouldn't have these thoughts anymore. If I'm progressing, this scale should always reflect that. If I am mentally stronger, I shouldn't feel disappointment or fear or uncertainty. If I'm disciplined, then I shouldn't sabotage or, like want to sabotage, but actually doing the thing, like returning to a behavior that you've repeated in the past. But the truth is that those moments are still going to happen. Growth doesn't mean that they disappear completely. Growth means that you don't automatically follow them anymore. For a lot of people, the old pattern would look like this. You see the number on the scale, you feel disappointed, you start telling yourself a story about how nothing is working, you say, fuck it, you emotionally eat, and then you feel worse. And that cycle continues. But that new pattern of you see the number, you feel disappointed, you pause, you zoom out, you gather more context, and you choose an action that actually supports you. The emotion didn't change, the trajectory did. So if you ever catch yourself thinking, why do I still feel this way? Or even why am I still doing something? Because I'm not going to go into depth here in this episode. This will be a future episode, but there will also be behaviors that pop up even when you've gotten away from them for a period of time. I want you to think about that and shift the question. Instead, ask yourself, what am I going to do with this feeling? Because feelings are information. They're not facts and they're not instructions. So, something simple that I teach the people that I work with is this process of noticing, naming, navigating. Notice the thought or the emotion, name it without judgment. Like, okay, I'm feeling disappointed right now. And then navigate it. What action actually supports me right now? That's how you build self-trust. And that's how you build self-leadership. The truth about growth is that it's often way less glamorous than people think. It's not about never having the more I'm hesitant to say negative thoughts again because they are on surface level negative, but as we know, like they're just thoughts, they're just feelings. And when we're able to do these things of noticing and naming and navigating, they tremendously support our growth. But when those thoughts or feelings, like they're things that don't feel good. Let's say that. They're kind of like the more ewy ones. So, it's not about never having those more ewy thoughts or feelings again. It's about having those moments and then responding differently, pausing, zooming out, making the choice that supports who you're becoming, who you want to be, but who you are becoming. And those moments might feel really small, and a lot of people will often just kind of like skip past them. But you know that I'm going to tell you that that's where the real change happens. And that is the coolest shit. And that is definitely the shit to stop and be like, hell yeah, go me. And think about how you've done things differently. That's a massive growth point. Again, that is where the coolest shit happens. So put this into play in your life. Remember that it's not about never feeling or thinking certain things. Again, that stuff's going to pop up. I can tell you personally, um, if I had a dollar for how many thoughts or feelings that pop up that I'm like, don't necessarily like that, I would be so rich. But when you're able to, again, not use those as facts or like instructions or let those things take the wheel, and you're able to move forward from that. That is the coolest shit. I don't remember where I started that sentence, but I'm just telling you. You could be on this journey for a really, 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 really long time, expectation-wise. I've been doing this for a really long time. I've talked to people who have been doing this for even longer, and this stuff is normal, and it's gonna keep happening. So don't think that you're doing anything wrong when those things pop up. As always, I hope that this was helpful for you, gave you a little bit of golden nuggets that support you in your growth and you doing cool shit in your life. Please give this a share, a like, comment. Anything helps the show. It helps you, it helps other people. And I will talk with you next time.